Hello, hello, hello. My name is Houston, and this is December. Each week of this month, I'll be bringing you a different end-of-the-year list to cap off 2023. Today, my favorite music and theater. And I took a lot of notes on these, so we're not going to be cute and pop around to different locations. I'm doing it here where I have access to my laptop. Yes, my name is Houston. This is Media Mood Board, a show about hyper-specific entertainment lists. I love year-end lists. I especially love the ones that show off people's personalities a little bit. And hopefully I'll be able to do that with these. So in the spirit of this show, which is always just me indulging myself, we're going to indulge in a whole month of end-of-the-year lists. I've coupled two mediums into each week's episode to form kind of a loose theme. Week one, which you're watching, is music and theater, then books and comics, and then we'll do movies and games. I read all those gothic novels from 1900 in October, so for the fourth week, I'm going to try and make like a gothic short. Because what I'd like to do whenever I do a deep dive is to, create something from it. So you're welcome, world. And I know that doesn't match like the general arc of this month, so I'm sorry. I chose music and theater to go over the first week because they're the two mediums I have the weirdest relationship with. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. Theater. This is an area I'm still getting into, and as far as someone who goes to theater, I would consider myself a beginner. But this is something that I'm really interested in doing more of in 2024. A bit of brief background to inform the list. I recently moved from Texas to New York. While in Texas, I did improv for 7 years. I did improv, I did sketch shows, I co-wrote a play and a musical. So I'm coming from a place of adjacency, and I'm very familiar with the backstage. But as far as general theater knowledge or knowing the canon or the classics, I know relatively little. I saw 9 shows this year, and I was going to try and do a top 5 for each of these categories, but making a list of over half for my top 5 didn't seem in the spirit of the thing. So I just cut it in half, and we're only going to do a top 4. Number 4, The Cottage by Sandy Reston. Like every time, I've written my own synopsis, so I'm just going to be reading that. The Cottage is a Noel Coward-style 1940s quippy sex comedy about two lovers, Richard and Deidre, whose annual meetup to cheat on their spouses is interrupted by Richard's wife and brother, who have also been secretly sleeping with each other. This one was so goofy. It was so cartoony and fun. I would recommend the show for fans of Who Framed Roger Rabbit or Cary Grant comedies. There's a lot of fun slapstick. There's a lot of weird props that really landed, just very Looney Tunes. It felt effortless in a way that's really hard to pull off. It felt like a play that had always existed in a really fun way. I'm really excited to see what the writer does next. If she does an adaptation of Clue or something like that, I would lose my mind. I saw the show earlier in the year, and I think one thing that I was a little scared about when starting to see more and more live theater was, would I ever see a bigger production that matches kind of the emotions that I get from reading a book or watching a movie, or on that same level, or was everything going to fall a little flat? And I feel like this is the first thing that I have seen that's a big production that I felt was its best on stage. I wasn't sitting there thinking this is good for theater. You know what I mean? Number 3, Translations by Friel. This is a really beautiful historical drama that was originally written in the 80s by an Irish playwright named Friel, who's kind of known as the Irish Chekhov, is what I've heard. They're having a retrospective of his work at the Irish Repertory Theatre right now, and that's where I saw this. It's the 1830s in far northern Ireland, which means we are fresh off the Irish War of Independence, and the UK now has taken control of the area. The son of a schoolmaster shows up to the Irish-speaking village he grew up in, hired by the British Army to help rename and remap Northern Ireland for taxation purposes, and anxiety for the future sets in on the village. This one, I really came away with a lot from this one. It gave me a lot to think about. I'd say it's for fans of Atonement, maybe, or just historical dramas that want to play with bigger themes. I haven't seen too many off-Broadway shows, and which this was one. In every Broadway show, I feel like there's a standing ovation, and there was not a standing ovation at the end of this, as far as everybody standing up, and I thought that was criminal. It was such a great performance. I never read or heard of this play before, but man, it is so tight. Every element of it communicates with this main theme of language. I think there's some detractors to that, like it's too tight, but I really, really liked that. Everything was little gear all working together to say something unifying. The play is essentially about language and the importance of that and the power of that and the importance of how we communicate and the words and the vocabulary and the dictionary in which we can use to communicate with other people. And the play really builds on itself in the school where it kind of introduces you to the culture slowly. And because we're talking about language, you're seeing these phrases and you're seeing how people are talking. And then as the play goes on, they start using these phrases that slowly every word starts having multiple meanings because of the context that you've seen them in before. And by the end, they can say one thing and you can think of 5 different things that it's talking about. Just as an example, so this is about the British Army comes in to this Irish village and neither one of them can speak the other one's language. And one of the women in the village they're the will they won't they with this British soldier, and neither one of them can really understand each other at all outside of body language or snippets of phrases that they've heard, like little basic phrases or just things that they've heard other people say. And at certain points they're communicating just using these phrases that they know that mean nothing to them but mean something to the audience, and sometimes they mean something really weighted because of what we've seen before. It's just it gets super layered, which is fun, and it, once again goes into the theme of language and the history of a word. Like any good drama, it's not just a tin at dourness the whole time. It's not dramatic the whole time. It has humor in it. It has humanness in it. It has just normal conversations. It rides this really great ups and downs. It's just a very full show. I learned a lot about Irish history that I didn't know, and it was just really fun to see a historical drama on stage. That was super fun. The lighting was really good. The staging had a really good sense of place. And also interesting, Ukrainian theater put up a version of this show when Russia was invading their country in 2022. Now, number 2 and number 1, it was hard for me to rank between the two because one of them is really, really inspiring, and then the other one is probably the best version of a thing that I've seen. So, okay, I'll just do it. Number 2, Sad Boys in Harpyland by Alexandra Tatarsky. Sad Boys in Harpyland is the newest iteration of the lifelong project of clown Alexandra Tatarsky, a solo show which is both an experimental autobiopiece for Alexandra and an adaptation of the 18th century German coming-of-age novel Wilhelm Meister's Apprenticeship by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, a book about a German child who never quite writes a play. And in case that description was confusing, because there is a lot going on, this is an example of how it works. As their life goes on, Alexandra will read a portion of Wilhelm Meister's Apprenticeship corresponding to the age that they actually are. And then we'll create a vignette that is a combination of what's going on in the book and what's going on in their life. And that vignette will be added to the show, and then over the next couple of years, it'll happen again and again and again to create this series of vignettes that's created throughout their life that is both the story of the book simultaneously with the story of their life. I wasn't sure if the "this is a lifelong project" thing was a joke or not, but I talked to somebody after the show who'd seen a version of it a decade ago, so I guess it's real. That comes with its own interesting elements to it. Like in that Linklater film Boyhood that was filmed over a decade or whatever, you'll see he's interested in something and then he'll kind of not be interested in it anymore, or styles will change or interest will change, etc. And that's the same with this show. You can tell they were interested in this they're fascinated with this thing, or they're fascinated with, there's a section that's very song heavy, there's a section that's extremely prop heavy, there's a section that's more esoteric. In case that also wasn't clear, I'll give an example of how that looks. So in one of the early vignettes, early in Wilhelm's life, we see Wilhelm, who is Alexander, dressed in lederhosen with a thing that says "little boy" on it. They're wearing a keyboard tie that they just finished playing a synth ballad on, and they're miming hanging themselves with that keyboard tie. Alexandra then pops over from playing Wilhelm, who has this thick German accent, and becomes Wilhelm's mother at the door, banging on it. Wilhelm's mother then starts yelling, but they're not speaking in a German accent as well. They're speaking in a thick Jewish accent and talking about modern things and referring to the character as Alexandra. The entire scene plays out in this general tone with a 50% transparency on Alexandra's life and Wilhelm's life. But because it's clowning, it's absurd and it's over the top and it's really silly and stupid. I saw this with a friend who said this felt like a really long Kids in the Hall sketch. I would also recommend it for fans of clowning in general, or like if you've seen Natalie Palamides' Nate on Netflix, you'll love this too. As the show goes on, it iterates in a super fun way, and the prop work is just like so incredible in this. The show by like its concept is unfinished, which is a little frustrating. It deals with a lot of big ideas. It's like, what is the value of art, or what motivates us to keep doing things? But it doesn't really come to any conclusions. It's more of an in-progress conversation than it is any sort of statement. The final scene of it does kind of wrap things up a little bit, but it's an ongoing project, so you can't expect a fulfilling end to it. It's extremely ambitious, and there's just so much cool stuff in it. It's just a super inspiring show. And number 1, Merrily We Roll Along by Stephen Sondheim and George Furth. Second play from the 80s on this list. This one with music by Stephen Sondheim, a big boy who wrote, Sweeney Todd and West Side Story and Into the Woods and a ton of other successful things. It tells the story of 3 best friends over the course of 20 years, told through vignettes, starting at the gasping final breath of their friendship in the 70s and following the thread backwards to their youthful first meeting in college. The music was great, and I loved the storytelling structure of these vignettes going backwards in time. I found it super effective. I didn't know anything about this show going in, and I was just blown away by it. So many fun surprises. I've heard a criticism lodged against it that because you get to see the end and then you're seeing everything before it, that it kind of takes the wind out of the sails or takes all the tension out of it, but I really disagree. Not only are you curious to see how everything fell apart, but like translations, everything starts to have a layered meaning. If someone says something in the past that will or won't come true in the future, it suddenly becomes layered. An optimistic statement suddenly becomes, something that's a little sour. I would say the experience of watching this play is like watching a really good movie for the second time, where you're catching all these things and you're like, ooh, it's cool that they seeded that in there. I didn't even know. But you get the simultaneous experience of watching it for the first time and the second time all in one go. This is the best musical I've ever seen, and the best thing I've ever seen on Broadway. There's star power at play here, obviously, like Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe is one of the lead characters, but the whole that is to diminish the piece as a whole. The thing is so tactile. Most musicals that I've seen take a couple steps back from reality. It's surreal by nature that it's a musical. And I think melodramas are super fun, and there's a lot to be gained from that as well. I'm not to disparage melodramas at all, but when it feels real, it's just so different. Okay, so music was my art of choice during high school and college, and it was something that I really explored myself and humanness through. I was really plugged into new releases and could super effectively talk about them. As my life has gone on, though, it's moved from this a central figure of exploration to something that is more utilitarian or music-y, I guess, in purpose, to the point where I don't even know if I could really name to you my favorite artist or creator in the musical space right now. I can name things that I like, of course, but I'd say the main way I listen to music right now is while doing other things. I don't really even follow music reviews or releases anymore, so I'm much more insulated than I've probably ever been in my life, besides being a child, for music. Everything that I listen to is powered by algorithms, Wikipedia or Rate Your Music rabbit holes, or the occasional quietest list. I can say confidently that this list will be the most uninformed list of any of the lists that I've made this year. This is also the category where I'd be the most likely to scramble to listen to as many things as I could before making a list. So I'm just taking that pressure off of myself, and I'm just doing, this is the stuff that without influence, these are the things that I listen to. And I'm excited to look at everyone's You're the In lists and listen to those albums in 2024. So after I talk about each album, I created one of those YouTube ambience rooms and just playing one of my favorite tracks from the album or whatever I think represents it. If you don't like it, just scrub through it. I'll have chapter markers at the bottom, and hopefully YouTube does not strike me with lightning for doing this. Number 5, Piotr Kurek's Smartwoods. Smartwoods is Polish composer Piotr Kurek's newest album, an experimental soundscape that paints a picture of a primitive world full of technicolor electricity, inspired by the style of visual artist Jean Sariano. I like world building in all forms of media, and that includes music. You're going to hear like lutes and harps mixed with kind of like synth and these like instruments processed into something that's unrecognizable or alien. Kurek cites like early music, experimental jazz as like, he calls it the roots system of this album. Even that term itself imbues this electronic album with a real earthiness, like a cyber tree growing out of the ground. The cover art for this is really, really amazing, really sets the tone. I love good cover art. And the album's less than 40 minutes long, so something really digestible. You can get in and out and get a full scope of what this person's trying to build. This is an album just as easily put on in the background as it is listened to at full attention. The track that I'm going to show you is from the middle of the album. It has a little bit of everything in it. This is Klamm by Piotr Kurek from the album Smartwoods. Number 4, Noname, Sundail. So I know nothing about Chicago rapper Noname, really. And while doing a little bit of light research, I found out that one of the tracks on this album has a controversy behind it. Whoops. So this is just a heads up. If this album sounds interesting to you and you would like to listen to it, listen to that second track with a critical ear, because there are some valid accusations that have been thrown against the feature on there and the lyrics within it. So just a warning, just a heads up. This is a hip hop album with jazz and gospel influence and a really just super smooth poetic delivery, which is catnip for me. What's interesting about the controversy around that second track, in the context of this list at least, is that the lyrical quality of the entire album is very introspective and self-aware. And there's a track in which she name drops some people which she thinks has bent their morals, and then gives examples of why. And she includes herself in that. Regarding the controversy, one of her responses was that she put out that track to potentially take back control of her identity within her fandom. She wanted to alienate people with that track, and in so doing, giving herself some control over who even listened to her. So this kind of whole album is her processing these kind of thoughts about identity and who she is. That doesn't excuse the second track, but it's an interesting picture of where this person's headspace is. I'm going to play you one of my favorite tracks off the album. This is Beauty Supply by Noname from the album Sundail.
Take that trip with me to the beauty supply. We make the standard refined, man, from crying, cry. Take a trip with me to the beauty supply. I need the standard refined, man, from crying. Fresh out the box, a bundle, 250 Rapunzel. Make pennies a market share, plenty the feminist in me. Don't bat no eye, support the black business, no compromise. Lot of self say this is self-love, to braid my hair down and masquerade hugs, because I just want to be the love of my life, set aside my own standard and really demand hers. Silly and absurd, wearing a fur cap, wig hat, and then preach I love everything black. I know it's seen cap, it's cap, wig caps the track, sabotage, I'ma hold me back like, new identity, same enemy. Me, when I believe I'm prettier with my weave, when I can see the forest behind the trees, I'll be free, I'll be free, I'll be free. Take a trip with me to the beauty supply. I need the standard refined, man, from crying, cry. Take a trip with me. Yo, lay me down by the edge of the river. Pray to God that my edges deliver a good look. Infantile baby hair make the men look. Eurocentric lookbook, residential forever. We live in a momentary lapse of judgment. Black concussion asleep at the wheel. We trusted the plantation to drive us home. Hallelujah, idolize a white bitch while I rock a toupee. Cosplay new identity, same enemy. Me, when I believe I'm prettier with my weave, when I can see the forest behind the trees, I'll be free, I'll be free, I'll be free. No identity, same enemy. Me, when I believe I'm prettier with my weave, when I can see the forest behind the trees, I'll be free, I'll be free, I'll be free. Take a trip with me to the beauty supply. We need the standard refined, man, from crying, cry. Take a trip with me to the beauty supply. I need the standard refined, man, from crying, cry.
Number 3, Laurel Halo, Atlas. artist Laurel Halo's Pandemic album is an ambient record, inspired by director Apichatpong, whereas Sithakal, a Thai director known for his atmospheric, slow movies. He's most recognizable like Uncle Bon Mi, who dreams of his past lives. Like I was talking earlier about like utilitarian music or muzak or whatever you want to call it, I find the most effective for me are ones where it sounds like an orchestra is warming up, just like a whole album of just that. Like the instruments are kind of talking to each other, or whispering to each other in their own language. It's not performing for people. It's like a conversation between themselves. Like the type of music that's like a slow rising pool of water, and like it just floats my consciousness off to another place, and I don't realize I'm there until I'm already there. A lot of times I'm too like honed in on stuff, so music like this that really just takes me out of my body is such a joy for me. Harder to find than you think, this specific thing. And this album feels like a haunted watercolor, just like ink like bleeding all over the place. There's some occasional like dipping into like some saccharine cringe that happens in a lot of these like ambient records, but the drone is good enough that you kind of just forgive it. Much like with Kurek and Smartwoods, Halo has said for Atlas that she was interested in looking at the conversation between acoustic and electric in building out what she calls like a map, or these spaces that each track is. So this one's a little long. I'd encourage you to walk around and do something, or just sit there and enjoy. That works too. But this is from the middle of the album. I really love this one. This is the title track, Atlas, from the album Atlas by Laurel Halo. Number 2, Art Feynman. Be Good, the Crazy Boys. I typically have at least one like of these wordy post-punk things in my end of the year music lists. Feynman is normally this pop solo act, but with this one he got a band together to create it. The Crazy Boys is this like kind of mutant disco album. It sounds like if the Cars were a band from Britain in 2010. He cited inspirations from like Grace Jones and Lizzie Mercer-Declue and like the Talking Heads. This is just stupid danceable. I don't really have anything intelligent to say about this except that it's really, really fun. So I'll just show you one of the tracks. This is Passed Over by Art Feynman from Be Good, the Crazy Boys. Chaimbeul, Carry Them With Us. My number one. I think even just a basic description of this album you'll know if you're interested in listening to this or not. Carry Them With Us is the newest album of experimental Celtic drone music by Scottish small pipes player Brighde Chaimbeul, in collaboration with saxophonist and composer Colin Stetson. This is like earthy, acoustic ambient music. It's just 1 to 3 people in a room playing analog instruments with no post-production outside of just mixing. The tracks are a mix of old Gaelic songs that have been passed down by oral tradition, and then other tracks which are them just improvising together. It's music that feels like it has like secrets that it's holding, like it's an ancient language. When you feel transported or taken into the music, you feel like you're connecting with people who had lived in a different time. There's a lot of layers to oral tradition and history in this. Even the instrument that she chooses to play is the small pipes, which is something that has historical precedence in like the 1700s, but the current version was popularized in the 80s. So this kind of modern mixed with very old is something that they're interested in exploring. This kind of traditional music as a jumping off point rather than something they're confined to. As an example of some of the historical tracks in here, there's a song called I'm Disposed of Mirth, which was a song passed down by oral tradition that was originally sung by Scotswomen as they were like beating cloth to get it dry and things like that. It was a thing they sang to pass the time. And now you can listen to that or an iteration of it while you are doing chores or paying attention to it specifically. And you can really let yourself float away into that world. A lot of old Gaelic songs were based on birdsong, and they iterate on those songs too. In these really interesting, fun ways that just transports you to a different place in time that is exploring it rather than being beholden to how it exactly was at the time. If you know Colin Stetson's work, you'll immediately recognize his saxophone on this album, but he provides this really cool droning companion to Brighde, and it's just like it sounds great. It sounds great. And if you like Colin Stetson, you'll immediately say like, oh yeah, here he is. I love the tactileness of this. I love the humanness of this. I love the world building, and it just feels like magic to me, this album. So if that sounds like your bag or something you're interested in listening to or giving a chance, which I know is a big ask, I love it. This is Crònan from Brighde Chaimbeul from my favorite album of 2023, Carry Them With Us. What was your favorite music or theater from this year? Please let me know in the comments, because this is a huge blind spot for me. So the likelihood that I'll have heard of whatever you comment is low, and I will love looking into it. I'll see you next week with another year-end list, books and comics, and then the week after, I'm doing movies and games. If you liked what you saw here, you can follow us on Letterboxd or here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Houston. This is Media Mood Board. Bye.